Our enemy, Satan, is a sneaky, cunning being. He understands mankind, and he also knows how to deceive very well. He is the lowercase g God of this world. He is the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that works in the children of disobedience. He's been around a lot longer than any of us, and he knows scripture. In this video, we want to point out a couple of things that we believe will be very helpful for you to recognize a strategy the enemy uses to deceive and how to overcome it. Let's go to Genesis 2 and start in verse 15. And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. And Yahuwah Elohim commanded the man, saying, Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. Genesis 2:15 through 17. Now let's move to the next chapter in Genesis. And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, Is it true that Elohim has said, Do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, Do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, You shall certainly not die. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be open, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. Genesis 3:1 through 7.
Notice what Eve said in Genesis 3:3. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, Do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. Did Elohim say that they would die if they touched it? No, he didn't say that. Let's look again in chapter 2. And Yahuwah Elohim commanded the man, saying, Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. He said, the day you eat of it, you will certainly die. He didn't say anything about touching it, which leads to our first point. We must know what the word says and what it doesn't say. Eve missed what was actually said. Whether she missed it because she didn't hear it directly from Elohim or because Adam didn't express it properly, we do not know. We do know that she knew something because she said they were not to eat of that tree. But what she did was add to what Elohim said. Elohim never said not to touch it. When we look back at Genesis 3, we can see that Eve must have trusted the serpent when she did not die after touching it. Now imagine for a moment that you are Eve. The serpent is talking to you, telling you that you are not going to die, and then you actually touch the fruit, and everything might have seemed okay. For a moment, the enemy may have just built some trust in your life because you didn't die. Then, the only thing left for you to do is eat the fruit because it may have appeared like it's okay. We are not saying that she felt the serpent was credible only because of this, but if she touched it and didn't die, we can imagine that she must have felt that if she went all the way, then she would be okay. There is more to the story which we will touch on in another point that also contributed towards her eating. We want to get this point across that when the Most High tells us something, we need to pay close attention to it. We must understand what he is telling us. We are not to add to or take away from what he says because it changes the effect and meaning of what is actually being said.
Another reason why we need to know what Scripture says is so that we are not deceived by the doctrines of men. Mark 7:6-8. And he answering said to them, Well, did Yeshayahu Navah concerning you hypocrites? As it has been written, this people respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commands of men, forsaking the command of Elohim. You hold fast the tradition of men, washing of pots and cups, and many other like matters. 1 Timothy 4, 1-9. But the Ruach distinctly says that in latter times some shall fall away from the belief, paying attention to misleading spirits and teachings of demons, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having been branded on their own conscience, forbidding to marry, to abstain from foods which Elohim created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. Because every creature of Elohim is good, and none is to be rejected if it is received by thanksgiving, for it is kadosh by the word of Yahuwah and prayer. If you present these to the brothers, you shall be a good servant of Yahusha HaMashiach, being nourished in the words of belief and of the good teaching which you have followed closely. But refuse profane and old wise fables, and exercise yourself rather to reverence. For bodily exercise is profitable for a little, but reverence is profitable for all, having promise of the present life and of that which is to come. Trustworthy is the word, and worthy of all acceptance. Matthew 7:15. But beware of the false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are savage wolves. Matthew 24:11 and verse 24. And many false prophets shall rise up and lead many astray. Verse 24. For false messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. In these last days, we have to have our quote-unquote spiritual antennas up and be aware, as there are many so-called teachers, so-called pastors, and so-called prophets who speak lies and deception. Many are agents of Satan.
For I want you to know what a great struggle I have for you and those in Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh, in order that their hearts might be encouraged, being knit together in love, and to all riches of the entire confirmation of understanding, to a true knowledge of the secret of Elohim, even the Father, and HaMashiach, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And this I say, so that no one deceives you with enticing words. For though I am absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in spirit, rejoicing to see your good order and the steadfastness of your belief in Mashiach. Therefore, as you have accepted Mashiach, Yahusha, the Athan, walk in him, having been rooted and built up in him, and established in the belief, as you were taught, overflowing in it with thanksgiving. See to it that no one makes a prey of you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary matters of the world, and not according to Mashiach. Because in him dwells all the completeness of the Almighty bodily, and you have been made complete in him, who is the head of all principality and authority. Colossians 2, 1-10. The enemy is using many ministers in these last days to bring lies to the body of Messiah, and there are many in churches who use the word of Yah in their messages, but often add to or take away from what the scripture actually says, all without believers even noticing. How do we know? Because we were in the church for many years, until Yah called us out. We were being misled and deceived, trusting that the pastor or teacher knew what they were talking about. We also know others who are still in these churches being led astray by those who twist and manipulate the word of Yah. People hear a pastor speaking a message, and during that message, the speaker quotes scripture. During the same message, the speaker adds or interjects untruths that aren't in the scripture, and everything the speaker said is often believed and taken as truth by the hearer. The hearers often believe the untruths with the truth because they don't know the word. If we don't know the word and are not using discernment, we may not know that we are being misled. Satan does use many in the pulpit to lie and to deceive the believers. Here's a survey done in 2021. It says that about 11% of people in the U.S. read their Bible daily. This next graphic says that about 210 million people in the U.S. claim to be Christians. This also says there are about 332 million people in the United States. If we take these statistics at 11% of the 332 million people in the U.S., that is saying that 36.52 million people read the Bible daily, even though 210 million claim to be Christians. This is ridiculous. It can easily be assumed that the majority of people who claim to be Christians are somewhat biblically illiterate. That is not to say they do not know any of the Bible. They may be familiar with some scripture at best, and at worst, don't know much of it other than what they are told, or maybe some of the well-known stories of the Bible.
This is why it is easy for Satan to deceive people, because they don't read their Bibles. Let's look at another statistic. 81.6% of Americans, totaling about 270 million people, own a cell phone as of 2023. The average American spends almost 5.5 hours a day on it and checks their phone 96 times a day, or once every 10 minutes. Hopefully, some of those 96 times a day are to check or read a Bible app. Why are we saying this? Not to bring condemnation, but to show that we have to stay in the Word. Scripture is crucial to us as believers. It is the foundation of our entire belief. It's important that we read, study, and show ourselves approved. It's easy to be deceived when we don't know what the Bible actually says. Let's continue on to the next point. The enemy has a strategy that he often uses that we must be aware of. Let's go back to Genesis 3, verse 1. And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, Is it true that Elohim has said, Do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, Do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, You shall certainly not die. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Genesis 3, 1-6.
We think it's important to see what the enemy did and how sneaky he was in doing it. He said in verse 5, For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, then 1, your eyes shall be open, 2, you shall be like Elohim, and 3, you shall know good and evil. In the next verse, talking about Eve, we see the following. And when the woman saw that the tree was 1, good for food, 2, pleasant to the eyes, 3, desirable to make one wise, she ate and gave to her husband. What did the enemy do here? Do not love the world, nor that which is in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Because all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passes away, and the lust of it. But the one doing the desire of Elohim remains forever. 1 John 2, 15-17. What the enemy was doing was trying to draw Eve into disobeying Elohim through the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Now, what did Eve say after Satan spoke to her? She saw that the tree was 1. Good for food, which is the lust of the flesh. 2. That it was pleasant to the eyes, which is the lust of the eyes. And 3. She saw that it was desirable to make one wise, which is the pride of life. Why did she see it this way? Because she believed what the serpent told her. He said to her that you shall certainly not die, for Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. The serpent deceived Eve by causing her to think that Elohim was holding out on her. She took the bait and ran with it. The enemy continues to use these same 3 things today: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. He tried the same thing with Yahusha that he tried with Eve, with different results. Then Yahusha was led up by the Ruach into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. And after having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the trier came and said to him, If you are the bane of Yahuwah, command that these stones become bread. But he answering said, It has been written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. Then the devil took him up into the Kodesh city, put him on the edge of the Mikdash, and said to him, If you are the bane of Yahuwah, throw yourself down, for it has been written, He shall command his messengers concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, so that you do not dash your foot on a stone. Yahusha said to him, It has also been written, You shall not try Yahuwah your Elohim. Again, the devil took him up on a very high mountain, and showed him all the reigns of the world, and their esteem, and said to him, All these I shall give you, if you fall down and worship me. Then Yahusha said to him, Go, Satan, for it has been written, You shall worship Yahuwah your Elohim, and him alone you shall serve. Then the devil left him, and see, messengers came and attended him. Matthew 4, 1-11. The enemy starts to question and tempt Yahusha in verse 3, saying, 1. If you are the bane or son of Yahuwah, which is the questioning part, and 2. Turn these stones into bread, which is the tempting part.
Now let's go to the previous chapter in Matthew, starting in verse 13. Then Yahusha came from Galilee to Yochanan at the Jordan to be immersed by him. But Yochanan was hindering him, saying, I need to be immersed by you, and you come to me. But Yahusha answering said to him, Permit it now, for thus it is fitting for us to fill all righteousness. Then he permitted him. And having been immersed, Yahusha went up immediately from the water, and see, the Shamaim were opened. And he saw the Ruach of Yahuwah descending like a dove and coming upon him. And see, a voice out of the Shamaim saying, This is my bane, the beloved, in whom I delight. Matthew 3, 13-17. Yahusha knew who he was. Verse 17 tells us that the Father told Yahusha that this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Satan tried to get Yahusha to prove he was the Son by telling him to turn the stones to bread. But Yahusha used the word of Yah against him, saying, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yah. He used a verse out of Deuteronomy 8. And you shall remember that Yahuwah your Elohim led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble you, prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. And he humbled you, and let you suffer hunger, and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by all that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. Deuteronomy 8, 2-3. As we mentioned earlier, the enemy knows Scripture. With the second temptation, the enemy tries to use the word of Yah by partially quoting some of Psalm 91, where he is saying, If you are the Bane or son of Yahuwah, throw yourself down, for it has been written, He shall command His messengers concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, so that you do not dash your foot on a stone. Look at the gall of Satan to try to throw scripture in Yahushua's face and say it has been written. But Satan is messing with the wrong one. Again, Yahushua used scripture against Satan by saying, It has also been written, You shall not try Yahuwah your Elohim, which he quoted from Deuteronomy 6:16. Do not try Yahuwah your Elohim as you tried him in Massah.
Then Satan tried something else in verses 8 through 10 of Matthew 4. Again, the devil took him up on a very high mountain and showed him all the reigns of the world and their esteem, and said to him, All these I shall give you if you fall down and worship me. Then Yahushua said to him, Go, Satan, for it has been written, You shall worship Yahuwah your Elohim, and him alone you shall serve. For those that don't think that Satan had this authority to give this to Yahushua, let's look at this verse in Luke. And the devil, taking him up on a high mountain, showed him all the reigns of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said to him, All this authority I shall give you, and their esteem, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I want. If then you worship before me, all shall be yours. Luke 4:5 through 7. Satan says he would give Yahushua all the kingdoms of the world if we would fall down and worship him. Again, Yahushua knew the scriptures and said, It is written, You shall worship Elohim, and him only shall you serve. And this is quoting from Deuteronomy 6:13, where it says, Revere Yahuwah your Elohim, and serve him, and swear by his name. From what we have read, we can see that Satan tried to tempt Yahushua to do three things. One, he said, If you are the son of Yah, prove it by turning these stones to bread. Two, he said, If you are the son of Yah, prove it by jumping off this mikdash, or temple, also telling him that messengers will keep him safe. And three, I will give you all the reigns, or kingdoms of the world, if you fall down and worship me. The enemy tried the same three types of things on Yahushua that he did with Eve. First, Satan tried to appeal to Yahushua's hunger and said, If you are the son of Yah, turn these stones to bread, which is the lust of the flesh. He then took Yahushua to the top of a temple and said, If you are the son of Yah, cast yourself down, for messengers will keep you, which is the pride of life. And three, Satan took Yahushua to a high mountain and showed him the reigns, or kingdoms of the earth, and all their esteem, telling him he could have them if he would bow down and worship him, which is the lust of the eyes. Satan tried his tricks, but Yahushua did not submit, nor give in to the temptations the enemy threw his way. Yahushua knew the scriptures and quoted them properly to combat the attacks. The enemy tried to manipulate Yahushua with scripture, but Yahushua knew better and continued to combat the attacks with more scripture. We need to learn to do the same. Now that we know that the enemy likes to use the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life to try to get us to sin, let's define the words lust and pride. Lust, from Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary: longing, desire, eagerness to possess or enjoy, as the lust of gain. Concupiscence, carnal appetite, unlawful desire of carnal pleasure, evil propensity, depraved affections and desires. To desire eagerly, to long with after, to have carnal desire, to desire eagerly the gratification of carnal appetite, to have irregular or inordinate desires, to list, to like. The outline of biblical usage: desire, craving, longing, desire for what is forbidden, lust. Strong's definition, G1939. A longing, especially for what is forbidden. Concupiscence, desire, lust after.
Pride, Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. Inordinate self-esteem. an unreasonable conceit of one's own superiority in talents, beauty, wealth, accomplishments, rank, or elevation in office, which manifests itself in lofty airs, distance, reserve, and often in contempt of others. Outline of biblical usage: empty braggart talk, an insolent and empty assurance which trusts in its own power and resources and shamefully despises and violates divine laws and human rights. An impious and empty presumption which trusts in the stability of earthly things. Strong's Concordance G212. Self-confidence, boasting, pride. To help recognize the three ways Satan comes at us, let's quickly go over the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. The lust of the flesh. Things that appeal to the carnal or fleshy things of life. Sins that try to satisfy our flesh, like gluttony, sexual addictions and perversions, drug addictions, violence, materialism, envy, wild parties, and so on. Galatians gives us some clear information on this. Galatians 5:19 through 21 says, "And the works of the flesh are well known, which are adultery, whoring, uncleanness, indecency, idolatry, drug sorcery, hatred, quarrels, jealousies, fits of rage, selfish ambitions, dissensions, factions, envy, murders, drunkenness, wild parties, and the like, of which I forewarn you, even as I also said before, that those who practice such as these shall not inherit the reign of Elohim." The lust of the eyes. This has a lot to do with coveting. It also can include desiring status, possessions, or people. This can also be having strong desire, visualizing, imagining, or fantasizing after things we shouldn't be. When we look at 1 John 2:15, it tells us, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him." Exodus 20:17. "You do not covet your neighbor's house. You do not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belong to your neighbors." What are some examples of the lust of the eyes? Desiring things that don't belong to you, such as wanting to have someone's home or a spouse, desiring riches, pornography, wrongful and imaginative thoughts of evil things, wanting power, and so on.
The pride of life. This has a lot to do with strong thoughts of oneself, how one sees themselves, often in a boastful or arrogant way. We should see ourselves the way that Yah sees us, no more, no less. Examples of the pride of life include narcissism, example, always taking selfies, constantly looking at yourself. Also bragging, boasting, being high-minded, exalting yourself, being conceited, and so on. People who walk in the pride of life often want to be the center of attention. They seek after fame and need to be constantly praised. They also lack humility. Romans 12:3 says, "For I say, through the favor which has been given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think more highly than he should think, but to think soberly, as Elohim has given to each a measure of belief." Let's recap a few things. The enemy can easily deceive people because he knows most don't read or know scripture. The enemy uses the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life to try to get people to sin. We must pay careful attention to what the Most High speaks so that we don't miss what he is saying. We must know what is written in the Word so that we are not deceived by the enemy. We can recognize if we are being misled by doctrines of devils and or of man. We can combat and resist the enemy with the Word of Yah And like Yahusha, when the enemy comes, we too can say, "It is written." We can recognize when the enemy uses the temptations of the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. We can feed our spirits. We also need to be aware that just because someone quotes a scripture, it doesn't mean they are using it properly in context or for the right reasons. Context is important, and the spirit behind what is being said is important too. The enemy banks on the fact that many people do not meditate on scripture or even read it. How can we know if what people are teaching is true if we don't even know what the scriptures say? How can we resist the enemy when we don't use our weapon, which is the word of Yah? The Most High wants you to know and understand His word. If you do not understand what you read, take time and pray. Ask Him to lead you. Allow His Ruach HaKodesh to guide you into all truth. Just like we eat daily, we need to read, meditate, and allow ourselves to be fed with the word of Yah on a continual basis. If you don't spend time in Scripture, there's no better time to start than right now.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has been helpful to you. We ask that you please like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel, as this helps us reach more people.
May Yah baruch you and keep you. May He make His face shine on you and show favor to you. May Yah turn His face toward you and give you peace. We love you and are praying for you. Until next time, family. Shalom.